Hey, today's kind of a unique day. A special friend of mine, Josiah, we met about a year ago because of the channel. And because he is in film and production, he had his own ideas for how to do this. And who am I to tell, somebody who's, this is what they do. So I thought it would be kind of fun. And so I'm going to let you kind of take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Larry, and thank you for letting me be on your show. It's a real honor. And yeah, what I thought was instead of hearing about Josiah, what if Josiah interviewed Larry?
The real deal. I want you to ask any question.
And so that's what we're gonna kind of do. And so to jump right in, tell us super fast, what's your net worth and how many times have you gone bankrupt?
Okay, uh, I'm I'm
I want to know who is Larry kind of starting off? What is your main passion regarding people specifically? What would you say?
well, that's an interesting question, Josiah, because I may not answer it the way I'm just going to answer it the way that, I'm going to give
Please
the
do.
real deal. I want you to ask any question. You know what's interesting? I'm very comfortable being who I am. And so you get the real deal because when I was young, I rounded 60. I'm probably more confident than ever because I'm very comfortable losing 20% of the world's population may not like me at all. And so I don't live to impress people. But you know what's so awesome, Josiah? Because when I was your age, you're close to 40, I think,
I
right?
just turned 40.
You just turned 40. Okay.
Just turned 40.
Well, in my 30s, I was still pretty concerned about what other people thought.
Mm.
And it's really freeing to not really care what other people think. And I'm not saying my biggest concern is always what God thinks, but I do want to say that. I do really want to seek first the kingdom of God. And there was a verse I memorized when I was young because I did not have, I ended up, I'm proud to say, and I've met your beautiful wife. You did very well for yourself, but I did quite well for myself too. You got to talk to Tracy today
That's true.
on the phone, but
That's right.
you have not met her yet. But I got to meet, I got to marry somebody who I'm very attracted to and very proud of. And when I was a kid, I didn't get to date. I didn't have any female friends, and so I became pretty obsessed with how could I improve my luck with the female gender. And, I always had a few good guy friends, but I lost friends, Josiah, when I would change who I was in order to try to win more people. And as I
Wow.
began to decide, you know what, people actually, it's weird to say this, but people love to meet the real you. And when
Mm.
I finally was comfortable enough to become the real me, I don't lose any friends. If I don't make friends with everybody, not everybody likes me initially. I'm very comfortable with that, but I never lose friends because I don't change who I am. And so, but anyway, that's maybe the way I would answer the question you just
I love
asked.
it. I love it. I think just to dig in a little bit further, and obviously you can either answer this or not answer this, but
Well, I will remind you, Josiah, I am the one that's going to edit this show. So if you
it's
ask a
true.
really bad question, then I'm just not going to put it. No, I'm not. It's
Well,
not my goal. Like Rush Limbaugh used to say, it's my goal to make me look good or whatever. That's not my goal. But
I
I do
love it.
have one comment about the format of this.
Yeah.
I think that it's really cool because you sent me some questions and I didn't want to be rude, but I intentionally didn't look at those questions.
I love it.
Because I want it to be authentic. I want it to be raw. And I feel like one thing that our culture lacks is authentic, raw communication. And I think people are hungry for it. And I'm not saying this is everybody's cup of tea. I don't know that who else would care. It humors me and I find it interesting that you would want to do this, but you do know me because we sat for hours and talked. And we it was really fun.
And phone calls as well. Like I remember find when I first found your channel, I was so struck by how real and authentic you were. It felt like I was literally just sitting across from you, hanging out. When you did your first boot camp, the most exciting element, I would say, or well-received element was dinner with Larry, right? And I,
Lunch with Larry.
what was that? Lunch with Larry?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, when I was a youth pastor, I had a weird resume in ministry. If I would rate where my greatest success was my first job in ministry, and I went to a little farm town which I never wanted to live in. It was a town of 500, and there was a little high school with 38 students. And I had the idea of I rented a trailer. I was pretty well compensated at that. That was really the only ministry job I was ever well compensated relative to like a school teacher. I was actually paid a little bit more than a school teacher. It was a successful little church. And
Great.
so I remember that year that I started doing lunch with Larry, which is once a month, I'd have a free lunch for the kids in the high school. And I did
Oh,
it through the whole school year. And I had 34 of 38 kids out of that high school come to my house over the 6 times I did it during the school year. And so I learned that a crazy idea was very well received. And you are right, you didn't get to go, but the lunch with Larry, I did evaluations, and this reminds me, it's during the holidays now. I need to send people as part of the event wrote a letter to themselves about their goals and what God was teaching them in the middle of the wealth transfer and how they responded to the teaching we had. But I also did reviews, and then I asked them to write a letter to themselves, which I'm going to mail this week to them if they're watching. But
that's
the
perfect.
reviews over lunch with Larry were amazing. And I just think that usually people who enjoy success, because I've definitely experienced plenty of failure, but usually people guard their success and they don't share how you can do it. And I hope that you believe, and I really do want as many people to have success as they can. But if you want to, concentrate in self storage and come right in my backyard, I'm not going to tell you all the secrets. But as long as you live at least 15 miles away, then I'll tell you everything I know.
Very wise. I love it. Well, it's kind of along those lines that I want to keep kind of drilling down. And so if you wouldn't mind, just tell us super fast, what's your net worth and how many times have you gone bankrupt?
Well, I'm going to be elusive on the first question. It's a
Sure.
very good question. But okay, uh I'm I'm right around the ringer of an ultra high net worth individual, which might recover. I'm going to leave it at that. So I think
Okay.
that's a Googleable.
That puts us in the ballpark.
Yeah.
And then how many times have you gone bankrupt?
I've only gone bankrupt once, but I've almost gone bankrupt a number of times. And it's kind of the way that land development goes. And I will tell you that after it happened, it almost happened right out of the chute, my first development. I've really only done 4 developments. And I would say that it's an interesting thing. They all had great levels of success, and but I timed it wrong and jumped in '06 after making a bunch of money on my previous one, and started it in the middle of '07, delivered the buildings in '08, and it was just horrible timing. And really, everybody who was, you know, so I was so focused on making money, and I got to sit in a chair, and I wasn't worth minimum wage. The reason
Mm.
I didn't lose my storage business after I failed is because we put 20% down. We bought 134 units for $1.6 million, had to pay 9.5% interest, which was really high. Couldn't refinance for 10 years because the guy negotiated that. But I was nervous to buy a business and develop storage. because I didn't have a track record. And in those days, it was pre-internet. And so without timing the yellow page ad, you couldn't be successful in any business without the yellow pages. And I didn't, that's funny, but
Wow.
I couldn't figure out how to get around that. So I ended up, we were paying, we were contractually obligated when we bought that little site, 134 units. We were paying $1,300 a month in yellow page ads. Now our Google budget is under half that, and we have like six times the coverage. We
Revenue.
have 124,000 square feet of storage. We had 34,000 square feet of storage, and we were paying $1,300 a month in 2007. And so, um, if I knew what I knew, I could, and that's the thing. I'm just kind of bouncing maybe ahead. I don't know where you're going,
Great.
but
Yeah.
I learned that I thought I had to figure everything out myself. And one of the things I've learned in my experience with success, which I'm going to say one thing I'm really proud of. Most people in business only develop expertise in one area. So I developed, and it took me a dozen years to become a very proficient single family home builder and
Mm.
developer. So the most homes I ever sold in 1 year was 25, which for a small guy, it's pretty good.
That's a
Um,
lot.
but then I moved into storage, and it took me about 6 years to become a proficient, knowledgeable self storage person. And then I was able to move into the multifamily space in 3 years. So every time, because of my combined experience, I was able to cut my. Now, just because you're an expert, it doesn't mean you're the smartest person in the room. It just
Sure.
means that you have a competency. And so I thought that was interesting, but I wasn't. So my biggest goal hasn't been to make money. My biggest goal has been to learn. And what I learned from going bankrupt is if I focus on making money, it's kind of stupid because it makes you take too big of stretches. And so when I sat there for all those
Mm.
years, um, from 2008, when we knew we were, screwed, for not the best way to say it, until we really started to recover in 2012. For 4 years, it was just miserable. Then the lender called me out, sued me for $1 million. I had just barely recovered. I wasn't worth anything.
Mm.
The reason we didn't lose it is because the business wasn't worth anything. The storage, we did not make any money, because we put 20% down, and I was able to make the argument that all businesses lost 20%, over 20% during the fall. So I negotiated a negative amortization loan. So instead of paying 12,000 a month, I made a deal with the old guy that I bought it from. I said, Ken, could I pay you 9,000 a month so I have 3,000 a month to live on? And before that, we were living on 12 a month when times were good. We were um, making over 1,000 a day, got up to 2,000 a day for a couple of years. We were living on 10 or 12,000 a month. And to go back to a quarter of what you used to live on was very difficult. We lost our house. So, but I learned a lot, and I decided I'm not going to focus on making money. I'm going to focus on building my wealth, and I wanted to be kingdom oriented. I do feel like I made sacrifices for the business that I wish I would have been more sacrificing for my family. So I think I'm kind of steering the ship a different way later in life, and that's a future conversation someday.
Well, those are all really great answers, and they all pretty much hit what my next question was going to be, which is, what did you learn from that? And I feel like we've got five of those, so it's fantastic. So I want to kind of um, pull out a little bit more, kind of just a little bit of you've got this YouTube channel, you've been kind of working this for some time, and you obviously have a heart for people, not only towards the wealth transfer, which we're going to dive into, but also towards, not having to pay the price of bankruptcy. Would you say that's your goal here with this channel, is to bring financial literacy to the masses?
I would say that, but let me say why I have such a passion for it. The pain
Yeah.
of regret is probably the greatest pain there is.
Mm.
And I would have I was never most likely to succeed. I was always on the smarter half of the class because you kind of know where you're at, but I was never in the smartest one quarter of the class. So even numerically, I remember I was 91st on my GPA out of my class. Uh, I was right at a third of where I was out of the class. So I knew I wasn't that smart, but I wasn't dumb. And I think the pain and regret is like the most cutting, intense pain because it's preventable. It's you caused it. And
Mm,
I would have never thought I would have been rich. And then, of all people to get rich, I would have never thought I would lose it. And then, after I lost it all in bankruptcy, where, you literally in Washington State, you go into the judge and you prove that you basically are worth under $10,000 other than you can have equity in a house. You can have a generous equity in a house, like 100,000 in Washington State. But other than that, you can't have a good car. It's just a mess. It's horrible. And so you can't have a reliable car. I mean, it's one thing what it looks like. So I just don't want people to go through the pain that I did of it's super hard to hold on to wealth when you come into it for the first time. You look at all the professional athletes. My brother was a professional athlete. He played for 12 to 15 years. He had a peak of 12 years and he did play more, but he wasn't maybe, you know, he's going to watch this. So he played for 15 years.
there
But
you
it
go.
wasn't all equal output,
Sure,
as he
sure, sure.
became, that's a really long time for pro ball. And so
Yeah.
he was older and didn't make as much right at the end. And so watching him, he was able to transition into business, but a lot of his professional athlete, he walked away with a few million. So he was quite conservative how much he saved after paying all the taxes he did. But it slipped out of his fingers.
Yeah.
And then I watched him build it up and then I watched it slip out to a degree. Now he's still successful, but he's got regrets, because I
Mm.
watched him. And then I've got regrets. And so that would be one of my biggest focuses outside of the kingdom, but I think it's kingdom to steward well. And that's where the name came from. So I don't want people to come into this and regret how they spend their money.
I love it. You have, I think, from the time that I've listened to you over the, I think, year and a half that I've been following your channel, you have shown that you have something of a prophetic gift. And I wonder if you could talk to that a little bit and just talk about how the Lord has kind of brought this out and how you've stewarded your own prophetic gift.
Well, it's a very interesting question because the first time I ever saw the prophetic, there was a guy named Dick Wills, and he was kind of a groundbreaking guy in the Assemblies of God because I would say he was a prophet, but prophets are not loved and adored in the Assemblies of God officially from the denomination. And I say that as somebody who graduated from Assembly of God. I was ordained for a number of years. I know the Assembly of God theology. They don't they officially do not currently to this day uh, respect the role of the prophet or the apostle. It is impossible to be acknowledged. You can be a pastor, you can be an evangelist, you cannot be an apostle or a prophet,
Wow.
which I really kind of have a problem with now. So anyway, I'm a nice little Assembly of God boy, born and raised. A guy named Dick Mills in the late 70s comes through Washington State. We were a very up and coming church for a little town in Vancouver, Washington. We were a church of over 500 to 1,000. And so this guy came and he exhibited the prophetic. I was so attracted to it, I couldn't believe it. But he never shared how we could have it. He didn't preach the whole gospel of eagerly desire the greater gifts because this is something that God would like you to have. I mean, Paul, I think, was, you know, he wanted people to eagerly desire the greater gifts. This
Yeah.
guy just showed us the gift. I think he got phenomenal offerings, and I think he was a good man, but he didn't have the confidence to preach the good news of the kingdom of God, that the spiritual gifts are for everybody. So he stumbled into the gift, in my opinion, and he didn't have the confidence to share it. So I didn't grow up with
Mm.
it. I'm going to share kind of a dark thing. I've always been enamored by probably magical things, and I have a propensity, if I don't watch it, to watch shows that focus on darker
Wow.
things. And
Yeah.
I feel
Magic.
like that's a magnet that you can go either to the right side or to the dark side.
Yeah.
And I knew that God was talking to me. Don't encourage this fascination with mystical TV shows, even if they're on regular channels or whatever. Don't overindulge. I don't think it's a big deal to watch some, but that's what my curiosity was. What happened was, it was 8 years ago in April, I was prophesied on my birthday by my friend Jeff McCracken, who's been on the show before. And he prophesied to me, and that was the first prophecy that I really ever got that was like, holy smokes, this, how could he know this stuff? So I ended up, and we were quite good friends 15 years before, when he wasn't prophetic, but he
Mm.
prophesied over me on my Facebook page. And so I took him out to lunch. I was doing very well. Again, I had recovered from, we had just bought a huge property. Um, and anyway, I ended up going to a Bethel Supernatural Ministry School that he hosted. It was kind of like a mini version in a small town. And I
Yep.
just jumped in, have ran after God. And the thing is, here's what I would say. The it's the anointing and the prophetic are free, but they are not cheap. And so I
Wow.
have ran hard after God, and I've had the financial opportunity to not chase money anymore, because money now, my money is now tasked with serving, what I've called it to do. I mean, God's
Yeah.
given me wisdom, and I don't try to make a whole bunch more money all the time. It just comes in, and I manage it and I steward it. And I want to teach other people, you can chase money and it will not follow you. But when you make it your steward and you direct it, then it will do what you tell it to. And I don't know if that sounds perfect, but um, running after God costs a lot, but I do not regret it. And I'm able to tap into something that I'm so hungry for. And I feel like it's what I was meant to do.
I love it. You were talking about having this fascination for the mystical. Do you think that that's common with people who have a prophetic gift in their lives?
Absolutely. When I've had candid conversations with people, they almost
Yeah.
always confirm that.
Yeah. I can give you a brief story. I don't believe I'm a prophet, but I do know that I am prophetic. And so I can definitely relate. I'll tell you a brief story. Um, at one point I was deep diving YouTube as you can do for anything to do with Bigfoot, anything. You hear these vocalizations they're called or sightings or all this anything. And at one point I heard the Holy Spirit speak to me and he said, "Josiah, what do you believe about Bigfoot?" And immediately I thought, "Oh, well, they're demons. That's what I believe." And the Holy Spirit responds and says, "Yeah, why are you fascinated by them?" I was like, "Whoa, yeah, I don't want to watch this stuff anymore." And right then, no more deep diving, no more fascination, no more continual. And I think that is, as you said, probably more common than we know. People with the prophetic gifting are just interested in and captivated, and it can either go one direction or another.
And Josiah, I think there's people that are probably watching the show right now that are going, well, I've got this fascination, but I didn't know how I developed it. I think it takes an intentional choice, like almost everything that's important in life. It may cost you money, you know.
Mm.
Um, it may cost you $1,000 a year to join a course or something, but what's more important than your spiritual future, your spiritual heritage, your spiritual legacy? And so I think that you need to find a mentor and you need to begin to run after it. But the Bible's replete with illustrations of the school of the prophets. And I'm like you, I wouldn't call myself a prophet, but I've definitely um, enjoyed even visions, even
Hmm.
um, dreams that are totally
Hmm.
up from the Lord. I've had the bad pizza dreams all the time too. Those aren't, those aren't rare, but God is calling people and he wants to know them. And again, it is free, but it's not cheap. But as you run after him, he will meet you, and it's awesome. And so that's what I love. I wish the guy in the 70s would have told me one of my biggest regrets is that I really didn't get exposed to it till I was approaching 55. I was
Mm.
54 when I heard that the prophetic could actually be for you. Here I am raised in a charismatic, Pentecostal church, and nobody ever prophesied over anybody. They didn't know
Wow.
how. They
Yeah.
didn't believe it. They didn't believe the whole Bible. And I just want to believe the whole Bible.
And what a loss that is at that time. So, one thing I know about you, Larry, is that you spend a lot of time with the Lord in the mornings. You have tons of journals, probably on somewhere on the shelf behind you. Talk about that. How did that start, and what did it cultivate in you?
Well, it's a historical tool for increasing passion and godliness. And I would say that I'm not I go through cycles. It's a little bit like healthy eating or whatever. There's
Mm,
times or um
interesting.
there's times when I'm really good at journaling. Now I write in journals and I try to not be so stuck on my phone, so I make posts and I do write and I'm, working on another book and, thinking about stuff. So I use them that way. But when I was 16, I started writing in journals. And so my journals go back, um, approaching 50 years, 47 years, my
Whoa.
journals go back, and I can see the insecurity that I had. And there's a verse in Proverbs. My parents paid me 10 allowances. It's kind of funny because the amount was so pathetic, but it was 10 allowances. So it wasn't insignificant money for me to memorize a chapter of Proverbs. And I remember, I just forgot where it's at. It might be Proverbs 16 or 18, but fear of man would prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord will be kept safe. And I think it might be Proverbs 18:10. And I memorized most of Proverbs. I memorized hundreds and hundreds of verses out of Proverbs. And fear of man is something that I really wrestled with. And I think that God helped me. And so most of my old journals are full of stories of why I was intimidated by other people and stuff. And so I'm really thankful that I can testify that God helps us to overcome the problems that we have.
But what about more currently? What do you see the journaling doing for you at this stage?
Well, I mean, I'm going to answer it candidly. It's a weird thing to say. My, my passion now is I've really got a great life. I've got a great wife. I, I, I have so much I could totally quit and I could not justify spending the money that I already have.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not running for me, but maybe other people would say that I was. But I've shared this story before that at my funeral, and it kind of makes me teary-eyed because at my funeral, and I I feel like it's a God-given goal that 200 people would fly in that would say, I have 7 digits added to my net worth because of the passion and the inspiration that you have I've always had a curiosity about finance, but nobody would believe that I could do it because I'm not the
Wow.
most likely person to be a double decker millionaire,
Wow.
and so I want people to know if they've got an inclination. Now, there's other people who are much more godly. They have no fascination with money. I don't think that they're going to be a huge part of the wealth transfer. I just candidly don't. I wonder if they will because people make the stupidest decisions. And so our track record is we don't have very many bad decisions. I'm not saying that I'm at all perfect, but financially, we do not have very many regrets.
Mm.
And, but we made some big ones and it cost us. And my wife and I knew that we were risking not having a successful business going forward, but we had no residual income. And so we thought, well, we've had three successful developments so far. Let's go for the fourth one. And it brought us down. And so we knew we were treading in thin water. Now we have residual income, and I could be worth a lot more if I would have taken more risk. But I'm kind of glad because I'm very lean now. I owe one third of what for every $3 in value, I owe $1 in debt. So I don't lose
That's
any
really
sleep
incredible.
as times are getting interesting.
So one last question regarding the journaling. Is it prose? Is it prayers? Is
You,
it thought
you
dumping? What is it
Well,
like?
it's not,
What's the
it would be
experience?
boring, but it's so personal. I've wrestled with, if I would even leave it to my kids, but they've never had any interest much. My kids don't read my books. My kids don't watch the channel. And neither does my wife. So I can say that candidly I don't know that it would be interesting to people, and I don't write it for what other people. I never thought I'd be a writer. To be honest, since I've become a writer, I've not journaled nearly as much. It was more the passions. To be honest, I lost a lot. I was not a winner the
Mm,
majority of the first half of my life. So
mm.
as I chronicled my losses as I tried to keep my chin up, in difficult times. I wanted to be married in my 20s. I didn't get to be married till I was in my early 30s, and that's when I really started doing a lot better, probably emotionally and stuff. And then
Mm.
I, just started fighting to be a provider. I never dreamed I could be a winner financially, seriously. And it was a very slow process until we realized, holy smokes, we have millions and millions of dollars, but so that's a weird story, I guess, but I mean, maybe relevant to this conversation. But so I don't journal as much because my goal and my passion is to help other people. I get more excitement. Another $1 million literally is not going to change my life one iota. You know, I mean, it wouldn't. And so, but if somebody else can come into $1 million, that's life-changing money, you know, and so that's what I want to do.
Well, I love the image of 200. I think it's going to be more than that, to be candid. I'm quite positive one of those people would be yours truly because you've genuinely changed my life, and I'm excited to dig into that story at a later date. But I wonder maybe before we kind of shift, which by the way, I have read both books as well, just for everybody who's listening. I think it's worth shifting into some of
Sure.
the eight wells and the wealth transfer and all this. This is where did the term kingdom billionaire come from your recollection?
Well, Kim Clement, it's a funny story actually. Kim Clement very clearly talked about it. I've spent a couple hundred hours uh, researching every financial figure that I could think of. And obviously, billion and billionaire is something that's a bit, always affiliated with money. And so
Yeah.
I've searched how many times Kim Clement has prophesied about millions and billions and millionaire and billionaire. And what's a weird thing is that Lauren Atkinson is a funny friendship to have because Jeff McCracken, my great friend, is well connected. He ended up becoming affiliated with the Georgia Revival. And so Pastor Todd from Georgia came out to Washington, Oregon here. And Jeff, and he brought a team and he wanted some places to not have to really pay for a hotel, probably, all these peripheral people. And so Pastor Todd's assistant and son were here. It ended up being one of Lauren's best friends. She looks just like Lauren. They could be sisters, a very, attractive lady and her adult son. And when I got to know her, then one time I was watching Lauren and I heard her, and I never thought I could talk to a big YouTuber like that. And I realized she went to Pastor Todd's church. And so I called the lady who stayed at our house and I said, "Do you know this lady in your church named Lauren Atkinson?" She goes, "Lauren's one of my best friends." She's got this southern drawl. Lauren doesn't really have it, but she did. And so Lauren said, "Larry, we have to call this book The Rise of Kingdom Billionaires." Lauren's very powerful. She's not very tall. She's a lot shorter than you would think. I don't know if she's 5'1". If she says that, I think she's exaggerating because I think she's probably 5 foot. I was surprised when she stepped through the door because we wrote a book together and I'd never met her in
Oh,
person.
wow.
But she insisted that it had to be The Rise of Kingdom Billionaires. And I'm really glad it was because I really believe so. But I'm going to kind of go a little bit, talk at what I think is going to happen. What I think Josiah, is going to happen during this time, because the closer we get to the event, the more focus we can have. And I've
Yep.
wondered, are the prices going to drop or are the prices going to rise? Are we going to have
Mm,
hyperinflation? And I think the answer is we're going to have both.
both.
And so I think being a billionaire is not going to be nearly the big deal. I think right now, a billionaire, I think there's about 2,700 in the world.
I
Um,
think that's right. 3,000 was the number I had. Yeah.
yeah. So, and I think like 2,200 of them are in America. I mean, well, I think in the future, I think there might be 10,000 billionaires. So that might be a billionaire. I think a billionaire on the other side of the wealth transfer is going to be like 80, 90 million, $100 million. I think our money will change. And so um, I don't think being a millionaire in 3 years, you know, all kinds of people my age are millionaires, and I don't want somebody to feel bad if they're not. But there's a liquid millionaire, there's a net worth millionaire, there's all different $1 million in the bank.
Sure.
Very few people have that.
Yep.
So, and I don't have that. I don't want that. I think it'd be stupid. My wife and I get in fights over that. So, anyway, the billionaire Rise of the Kingdom Billionaire was Lauren as well as Kim Clement prophesied it numerous times.
Hmm. Yeah, fascinating. Why is it why do you think that this is something that's on God's heart for people to be billionaires, or is it even?
Well, I think the thing is who has shaped culture more than anybody in our lifetimes. Our
Mm,
culture has changed tremendously since I was young. And in the time that you've been alive, it's been the billionaires that have been impacting culture. And here we have a Western Christianity
yeah.
that we're taught if your church is like mine, stay out of politics. And what I hear when somebody says that, it's like stay out of culture. Do not worry
Huh.
about culture because the kingdom of God has nothing to do with culture. And that just gets me going. Actually, the
Mm,
last time a pastor said that, I was not very respectful. And I said, I don't believe it. I said it pretty loud. He
yeah.
said, we believe that Christians should stay out of politics. And I said, I don't believe it. Pretty loud. A third of the
During
people
the
in the
sermon?
sanctuary heard me. I thought, holy smoke, I don't believe that. He didn't hear me. I've really and we had a conversation. We went out to lunch after that.
Yeah, good.
But I didn't change his mind, and he didn't change mine. So it's a weird thing. I have a great pastor. All kinds of things I grant. We can't be divided that just because we differ on something, it's like we can't be friends. I think that's pathetic. I don't think it's kingdom. But I do think that with, and I say it a lot, you've heard me say it, with affluence comes influence. And
Yep.
I've become somebody in my own community that I would say is, it's shocking, but when I see the experience I have, people want to know what my opinion is, and it does matter in this little community of under 50,000. And so I've
Yeah.
learned that affluence brings influence. And so, but I write checks. I've written a check to the majority of the people on the city council in my town. Um, and so if I want to talk to any city council member that would vote for anything I support, I guarantee you, they answer the phone. And
There you
that we
go.
need to learn that. We need to teach that. And so I think that Christians need to be all about culture, which I think is exactly all about kingdom. Because
Yeah.
apostles were sent to mimic the
Right.
culture of Rome. And,
I just was going to
we
ask
need
that.
to do that.
Sorry to jump in. I was going to ask what's the word apostle even mean? It's exactly that. It's fantastic. Yeah, and obviously some of these questions are a little bit baited because I kind of know your stance, but I kind of, this is all super fun for me because I love the idea of all of these things over the last year and a half that I've watched your channel kind of being in one video. So this is very fun. So kind of just to shift gears a little bit, when was the first time you heard about the wealth transfer and what was your initial response?
I'm going to answer that question, but my lighting is changing and I'm with a professional person. I've got to change my lighting here.
No problem. Mine is two actually, and I'm actually surprised how well it's holding with that little key light there.
I don't know if that's better.
It's good. I think it's good.
Okay.
Yep.
I've got some shadows, but I'm just going to go with it. Okay. I'll let you re-ask the question.
Yeah, so I wonder, talk a little bit about when was the first time you heard of this term, the wealth transfer, and what was your first reaction to it?
Well, it's so interesting. I first heard about it, I didn't believe it because I was taught that God wouldn't put together prophecy and money. And I don't know who came up with that, but that's just what I believed. And so I
Mm,
really was railing against it. And I heard these guys at Wagner University where I went, and technically I didn't graduate. I finished the coursework, but I became fascinated and I felt like the wealth transfer is going to happen. I can't write a dissertation. It's a book. It's a couple hundred page book. I'm going to write a book, and that's what God wants me to do. So, but during my 3 years at Wagner, halfway through, I had a course on the wealth transfer because really, um, C. Peter Wagner was really the foundational apostolic voice advocating the wealth transfer. I mean, Kim Clement was prophesying about it at the same time he was receiving prophecies from Cindy Jacobs and other
yep.
people in the 90s. But Peter Wagner um, went on after he left Fuller to begin Wagner Bible Institute, is what I think they called it. But I was a skeptic. And then as I began studying it, and I still marvel, I'm just going to say this as I read Kim Clement, all the hundreds of hours, when you read it, I say it like this, like the, you know how the Bible doesn't conflict? Sometimes there's challenges with verses. When you
Yeah.
read Kim Clement and all his prophecies, he does not contradict himself, even though
Yep.
he prophesies over a 20-year period about the wealth transfer. I'm shocked that he just does. Now, they don't always fit, and it's not always easy. And the one mystery is the year that he's talking about. But he does not conflict with you can't show me two diametrically opposed prophecies
Mm.
that came Clement. So as I began to be aware of that, I was just so fascinated by it, and I still am.
Well, but in the beginning, you were not offended were you offended by this idea in the beginning or no? You just were fascinated straight off.
Well, I had already experienced catastrophic success and failure. And like, um, okay, let me just say, I have never made as much money in any investment as I have on the return of silver. That and Kim Clement prophesied about it. Here I am, a growing, successful businessman in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I never had a 2x return on any stock, never a
Wow.
3x. Um, I've now had 3x on a lot of my silver.
Mm.
It's because it's a prophetic investment. It's because I I understood the power of having liquidity with a certain knowledge of the future. And so I'm going to deviate a little bit, but you can go into it. But I will say one of the things that I've learned in my own experience, when you are given a gift of faith, it's a very offensive thing to your closest friends and family. It drives
Mm.
them nuts. I become obsessed on this idea. But like as soon as I heard that God was prophesying through his prophets about silver, I became so fascinated, irrationally drawn to that. And I think that that's one of the things that God does. But I will tell you, I'm already a recipient of the wealth transfer because that's a passion that I've had. And I've never had any other investment. Now, with real estate, when you use debt, you can have more than a 3x return. But then you also take on this huge liability, and I've paid the price with that. But as far as
Right.
a different investment,
So you said your family can be offended. Is that the right term? Why is that? Why do you think that is?
well, it's like everybody likes people in the middle of the road, but
Sure.
I don't think John the Baptist, I'm not saying I want to be like Jesus, not John the Baptist, but John the Baptist was not a middle of the road kind of guy. I don't believe Jesus was a middle of the road guy. I don't
Mm.
think anybody in Hebrews 11, the faith chapter, is a middle of the road person. They're wild people of faith that believe things. Abraham was given a call of God when he was old and he had a beautiful wife, but he was told that she was going to have a son. I think it took 20 years for that promise. I think about Caleb. He was given a challenge in his 30s, and I think he was 80 before he got to lead his family. And the interesting thing about Caleb, he believed it and he was able to pass the legacy on to his daughter because he gave her away as a prize for the person that would overtake the city when
Mm.
when they went to attack the land of the up in the hills. His daughter comes back and says, "Dad, thanks so much for the blessing, but can you also give us the waterfalls or the wells, this additional water currency?" And she was a person of faith that saw that we need to contend for the next generation.
Wow.
She was asking for not only herself but for her kids that they would benefit from owning that land. And I think we need to be more and more concerned about future generations.
But you would say that from what I'm hearing you say, faith is a extremely key ingredient in taking part in the wealth transfer. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll say something controversial. As a godly man, it would have been easier for my wife if I wasn't so filled with faith about the wealth transfer. The wealth transfer has not been a relational benefit to my
Mm.
marriage. And
Mm.
I'm just speaking that very candidly. I'm not speaking it um, out of bitterness. I'm just describing a reality. Do you think, okay, now this is a weird thing. There's so many parallels between health and wealth. And so, uh, and faith. I think that it doesn't rhyme, but so it's not easy to be married to a power lifter, or it wouldn't be easy to be married to an ultra marathoner. Those are wild people that are not balanced. And so why would you eat like that? Why would you exercise like that? Well, when
Mm.
you have faith, you do crazy things that are not ordinary. You're not in the 1%, you're in the one thousandth of 1% of people. You're outside. There's no other people like you as you become a person of faith. But I would encourage you to drink all you can and don't quit drinking, and God's grace will be sufficient. Your marriage will survive and it'll improve. And I have a great marriage. I do, but I've had difficult times because I believe things that most people didn't believe.
Why do you think it is that some people can see this and some people can't? What do you think's behind that? Do you think it's just clearly a lack of faith, or do you think there's something godly driving it?
Well, I don't have all my I appreciate the kind of the hard question, but I think faith is a spiritual gift in the Bible. And so I think we have the capacity for spiritual gifts, but not everybody chooses to engage. So it's not the it's the road less taken. It's not the easier way. And I think that there's a continuum of obedience that you could be. I don't think everybody's going to attain their destiny. I think I'm going to tell you that I think a lot of people are going to get to heaven, and when they see it, I think they'll instantly know. Now we see through a glass darkly, then we're going to see face to face. I think
Hmm.
a lot of people are going to cry when they get to heaven because they're going to realize they should have lived differently on earth. And so, if you make it your goal to not be focused on comfort here, it does make it very, you're either going to have uncomfort here, discomfort here, or it's really like pushing it on ahead, I think. I'm not trying to be overly noble, but I really am, I've already wrestled that, and I'd rather take the risk. I think it's called Pascal's wager is a way of describing it. But
Oh, interesting. I'm
I
not familiar.
well, if he makes the case about whether you should be a person of faith is believing in Jesus. If you believe and you're wrong, what do you lose? Versus
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
you if you make the effort to believe. But I just believe that we need to live for the kingdom of God for the next life without regret. I'm going to tell you how that's coming into being, just because you wouldn't even know this, I don't believe. We we are making an offer. I tried to buy a really nice lot that's really close to my house. You haven't got to visit me in Washington yet. A lot of people on the channel have been to my house at the Lunch with Larry's, as you mentioned.
Sure.
There's only one lot. I don't have a lot of really great places in Longview, which is kind of sad. I mean, there's a lot of nice places, but really great. And I made a list of 5 lots when I bought this house lot and I built this house. I made a list of 5 lots in town I would like to live on as I came into the ability to afford it. Anyway, one of those I became so impassioned with wanting to live at this best place in town, which I'm not saying I'm making me sound very godly, but I thought, you know what? There's not a lot of people trying to buy that. I'm going to go try to buy it off the dentist that bought it because he's getting too old and he probably isn't going to be able to build on it. I went to his house in June. He goes, "No, we're going to build on that." He's older than me. And so I said, "Okay, I just wanted to talk to you face to face. Never met you. I've heard about you. I knew who you were." He only lived 3/4 of a mile from me. So I go down to his house, looked him up through the county records, went down, met him. Anyway, 3 weeks later, my wife and I are on our walk. We walk by this beautiful lot in a gated community, and there's those lots for sale. And I couldn't believe it. So I was like, "Oh, this is so amazing. God's going to bless us and we're going to buy this." And he wasn't even asking a lot. He had owned them for 20 years and he was only asking twice what he paid for it 20 years ago. So it was a very, I felt like it was worth 50% more easily. I still would have bought him. But anyway, he is the weirdest thing. It didn't work out for us to buy him. I offered full price 2 different ways, but his realtor did not want to give me enough time to do my due diligence because I knew as a builder the complications because the stormwater rules had progressed, and I knew that lot wouldn't meet the current stormwater rules. So I needed more than a month and they wouldn't give me more than a month. I said, it's impossible to answer the question I've got, and I'm not going to pay for it. And so I was so distraught that I didn't get what I wanted for all these years. And then I know it's a really long answer, but then I'm like, God, why did that happen? I was really depressed for a week because I didn't get what I wanted, which is kind of pathetic.
It's
But
fun.
then I'm praying about it, and he's like, well, Larry, I don't really want you to live there.
Mm,
And I want you to leave a legacy, Larry. I want you to fulfill not only your destiny, I want you to carry out your legacy. So I want you to invest in the next generation, Larry.
mm,
And you can't live 2 hours away from the next generation and then have the impact that I want you to have. So I need you to get your butt up there and live within a short drive of your grandkids so that they won't have the same story that you do, that you don't have one positive memory nor one negative memory of either grandfather. But I don't remember either one of my grandfathers touching me. I know they never took me anywhere by themselves or took me out for ice cream or walked me to the
mm.
store. They didn't walk me across the street. They didn't give me a hug. I was a non issue in their life. There was no legacy. And
Wow.
I don't want to do that to my kids, my grandkids.
Wow. It's amazing. That's really amazing. Uh, just changing gears here. I wonder, talk about the dinar. When was the first time you heard about the Iraqi dinar? What were your thoughts?
Well, I thought it was the stupidest investment ever, and what kind of whack job would believe in that? I seriously, like, intellectually went after it. Like, what kind of crazy fanatic would believe this?
Yeah.
But as I began to study it, I found out the historical reference. So I'm going to just share with you. I've never told anybody this. I I watch people that talk about that are truthers. I think that there are people that are and it's kind of like what my last video was talking about. There are people who, if Donald Trump could tell us what he wants to tell us, he can't tell us because he can't be known. If you believe like I do that there's going to be tribunals, Donald Trump can't be all excited about it. He can't acknowledge it. I guarantee you he knows they're coming. But
Mm,
so he knows things that we have to know so that we don't split the country. Well, one of the truthers I was watching said, so what you're going to see in coming months, he goes, you're going to see a change at the Fed and you're going to see a change in oil prices. He goes, oil prices, Trump is going to be driving oil prices down and interest rates are going to go lower and lower. I remember the prophecy, speaking of the dinar, the prophecy for the dinar, there's the Dow that races to 20,000, but
right.
it also happens at a point when there's a break in the financial system of the Middle East. Well,
Yep.
what could cause a break in the financial system of the Middle East? Obviously, it's oil. And my brain over this weekend is all of a sudden, holy smokes, the break in the financial system is because Trump, who are we going to start bombing probably tomorrow? The biggest,
Venezuela.
the biggest OPEC oil producer, and he's going to bring oil in line with Western desires. It's going to destabilize the Middle East. He's going to push prices down, so it'll even hurt adversely Russia. But I believe that the dinar is closer than ever because this silver thing is going to destabilize banks who have been betting against the price of silver. And then if it's true what I heard, and I believe it from this truther, he said Trump is going to lower interest rates and he's going to lower fuel prices. And that, I believe, will create a break in the Middle East financial system.
Absolutely fascinating. That's some juicy tidbits right there, Larry. That's
So
fantastic.
I literally believe December is so legit for the dinar. I think it could happen so quickly. You
Yeah.
know, I'd be shocked, but I will also say, and my wife would point this out if she poked it around the corner, she'd say, Larry, you've thought the dinar is going to evaluate in the next 60 days for the last 2 years, so that's what she'd say. And she'd be
Well,
right if she
two
said that.
years is not 12 years.
Yeah.
Because there are some people who've been on this for 12 years, and I can remember the first time I heard about it.
Well, I
So
know that Kim Clement prophesied, and almost all his dinar prophecies were from 2011. And so
interesting.
that was when he started. Other people who were in Iraq were aware that it had a future value um, even while they were on the ground. So a lot of military guys brought their dinar home and have saved it. So there was rumors then, but yeah.
That's fascinating. So for you, what was it really that got you over the edge to say, I'm a believer? What was if there was one thing, what would you say?
Well, I just look at it and I don't know how to say this, but like philosophically or rationally, how stupid am I if I can buy something for $1,000, which essentially we have to pay tax in our state, but if I buy on eBay the dinar, if I pay $1,000, I can get 1 million dinar. And what's crazy is that's the price I've paid. I paid a little bit more than that and a little bit less than that over the 3 years I've been buying dinar, maybe 4 years. Um, and it's still worth what I paid. I've actually, you pay a discount, but so I buy an investment that I could sell to another, crazy Kim Clement believer for what I
Yep.
paid for it. And I have the possibility of making 3,500x return on it because I believe it will probably come back between 322 and 350. And so how stupid am I? And I'm not sweating, like I'm not piling all the money in to the dinar. I don't buy some every month. About every quarter, we take an amount of money that is, obviously we have extra. So some people would think it's a lot, but it's not. I don't get in trouble for buying dinar because it's not this egregious amount of money.
Right.
It's discretionary money. And so I'll buy a little bit more. And I'll tell you what that is. I mean, I'll buy a couple thousand, I'll spend 2,000 every few months on the dinar. That's just what I'll do. I already have a good chunk, but my wife doesn't feel comfortable with crypto and we're not buying silver now that it's gone up. So I just think how can you be viewed as crazy when until silver came along, I'd never made a 3x return. And I
Right.
believe literally it's going to be a 3,000x return. And you
On
can't tell
silver.
me if Kim Clement he wasn't lying. I believe he's a true prophet of God. But he talked about how he wants billionaires. And if you have 8 wells, and he says specifically, he gives outlandish things. He goes, some people for only $5,000 will become a billionaire. Well, you do the math on that. How many times they have to reinvest it? There's 8 wells. So I believe it. And but the thing is, I rationally believe it because you can read that the country has admitted they're going to reevaluate. So
Yeah.
everybody who studies it will come to a conclusion it's a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you followed.
Though I find them dry, but I find them dry, but I believe what they say. But I don't I I think it's prophetic things that are they look at it as a politically driven event. I think it's prophetically driven. So I don't think politics are going to change it, but I do think it's going to happen. He will definitely tell you, along with Mark Z, when it happens, they will tell you, you know.
Yeah, yeah. In case you're wondering, yeah. Well, he references the 3x, the special drawing rate, which is a very specific number from the Bank of International Settlements. I believe it's the BIS. Um,
So that would be a
not
very
the IMF.
small increase, right? You're talking. My brother was talking.
No, it would be a large increase. It would be somewhere between 350 and 420 was what I
Oh,
had.
okay, okay, yeah. So a
Yeah.
3,000 to 4,000 X return.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. Well, I kind of want to keep digging into the dinar itself.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
We should get together again before Christmas.
Okay.
Let's because this is a long video compared to what
Oh,
my normal
we're
stuff is.
already, and I'm only halfway through my questions, by the way. Well, we should just wrap it up. We can you can just cut all of this section,
We
because
can keep
honestly,
talking. We can keep talking. I'm going to make you, Mr. Director, I'm going to make you wrap it up and then we'll keep talking.
perfect, perfect. At this point, we're through easily half of my questions that I had for you, and there's so much more to go through.
I'm going to throw a teaser about what I'm going to ask you, and then I'll let you throw one teaser about what you're going to ask me. But here's what I'm going to ask you. You're a guy who has a call of God and you've ran after God and you've done ministry, but you've learned that your calling is not to be paid in full-time ministry, but you're running after your destiny and even your legacy is in question because you don't have kids yet. Yet
Not yet.
you're I believe you will. You know, so I want to talk about what it looks like to be somebody who believes that God is calling you to affluence and increased influence, yet you just
Wow.
rounded 40. So I
Yeah.
want to talk about how you actually represent a very young end of my reach and my channel.
I want to dive deeply into all of the eight wells as in total and get your deep, down and dirty, all down into the nitty gritty kind of thoughts on each one. But I think one big question that I still have for you will be, what do you think the grave surrender is when Kim references? And I think there's some fun different directions that could go, as far as how it relates with what's going on currently in society. So.
It
We'll leave it there
it
for
could have a temple. It could involve a temple, I
oh
think.
wow. Oh wow. That's a good
That's
one.
my guess. I cannot totally support that, but I think I can support it biblically. But that's my short answer. But I love it, Josiah. It's so much fun to it's always fun to talk to you.
Let me just say, Larry, thank you so much for having me on your show and for giving me the opportunity to kind of drive some of these questions and dig into who is Larry. And it's been a real treat for me. So thank you so much.
Well, I've enjoyed it a lot too. It's been really fun being the editor and having Josiah on the show today.